Thank you, Dolly, for that kind introduction, and thank you to all of you who have taken the time out this Sunday morning to come here. Is that somebody's cell phone? Okay, there we go. That have taken the time out to come here this Sunday morning to discuss what I think is a very important subject. And sometimes it's a subject that not everybody recognizes as a spiritual subject, a subject that's properly addressed by people who are in the path of yoga or the path of spirituality, the guru-disciple tradition. How does that apply to what we want to talk about a little bit today? Material success. And if you are a little bit like me, or not so much me now, but me as I was many years ago, you too would be wondering, having that question, material success, and perhaps having a little bit of a disdain even to that topic. Well, what I'm going to share with you today is based upon this tradition that Dolly introduced, the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, the autobiography of a yogi that he authored in 1946, and also the teachings particularly of his disciple, Swami Kriyananda, who was my teacher, who I had the good fortune to be able to spend most of my life studying under. And Swamiji himself was asked this question about material success, and it was something that was a lesson that he had to teach to those of us who were his young students in those days many years ago. As it was mentioned by Dolly, I met Swamiji in 1968. I was a recently graduated university student, and young people of that age, and particularly of my generation in the USA at that time, had a very idealistic view of life. That was good. That was good. We should be idealistic. If we're not idealistic as young people, when will we become idealistic? And that's a time of life when we look out to the future and we see how things ought to be, and perhaps we look at the world around us and we say, this is not the way they ought to be. They ought to be some other way. But that idealism of youth, I was fervor with it. And when I came to meet Swami Kriyananda, it was at a time in his life, 1968, remember, when other students similar to me came under his sway and he was quite well known. This was in the San Francisco area at that time, and he was starting an ashram. He was starting a retreat, actually, in the mountains of California. And at that time, he had to purchase property. Now, I, as a young student, had a little bit of a bias against materialism. Money. The root of all evil, isn't it said? The root of all evil is money. Well, I came to learn, actually, that's not the quote. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil, which is a big difference. Well, I came to meet Swamiji, and he, through years of very hard work of teaching in the San Francisco Bay Area, had raised enough money to make a down payment on a piece of property in the mountains, and to be able to start a retreat. And at that time, he was gathering students together to be able to help him to be able to create that retreat. And so I and a number of others joined in that effort. And I thought this was wonderful, a retreat. It was so beautiful in the countryside. But it never occurred to me who was paying for that retreat. It was Swamiji who had paid for that retreat. He worked very hard. He raised money over a series of years to raise the money. He bought the retreat. And it came as somewhat of a shock after about 1 year had passed, and I was there enjoying the lovely outdoors of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It came as a shock to me when he raised the subject, you all need to help. We need to purchase this property. Everybody needs to participate and help. And that thought had never crossed my mind, because isn't God the provider? God will take care of it. And Swami reminded us, yes, that's true. God will take care of us, but God needs instruments. God has to work through you and I to be able to make this happen, and that the raising of money to pay the mortgage, to be able to create an ashram, to create a retreat is a holy work. And to put one's energy into supporting something that's for the good is a great blessing for you, and it's a great blessing for those people who will be served by it. And my orientation of relationship to money began to become radically changed. And I began to see that, yes, material success is not only desirable, but it's essential, actually. And for those of you who have a bent toward the spiritual path, it's important that we understand this aspect and discard that aspect that seems to say that material success is somehow in opposition to spiritual success. They are not. And it's actually been my observation in my own life and in the observation of other people's lives as well, that if a person does not have the tools to be successful on all levels, emotional, spiritual, material, they're not going to make progress, particularly in any of them, because they're all part of the same universe. There's no separation. It's just a matter of octave, higher octave, lower octave, and to be successful on the highest octaves of our spiritual quest, we also have to be successful on those very foundational principles that upon which spiritual success is based on. And you'll find this. Sometimes it's been you, perhaps like me. I've met many people who they aspire to spirituality, but yet they can't pay the bills. They don't have the energy or the willpower or the tools to do some of the very basic requirements of living. And we have to be able to be successful there because it's the very same tools that we use to be successful in day-to-day life, whatever our career is. The very same tools, perhaps applied a little bit differently, yes. Those very same tools are going to be what we're going to use to be successful in the spiritual life as well. The two are compatible, and applied rightly, they're helpful and necessary. Now, there was a story from the life of Paramahansa Yogananda that when he was in the United States, as it was mentioned, he lived there for many years sharing these teachings. In the 1930s, he was 20s and 30s, he would travel about the country making public appearances, and his life was extremely busy. He was traveling most of the time. And one of the reasons he was traveling, yes, to get his message out, but also to support the development of his work in the United States as well. People don't realize in the background of what you see of his life as presented in his autobiography, there were bills to pay, and there were people that needed to be contacted, and all of that he also was supporting and making that happen until eventually he was able to attract help. But in the early days, he was tremendously busy. Well, he would travel in those days by train. And this was before the time of airplanes. And as he was in one compartment once traveling, he was in another man had come into the compartment and was sitting there across from him, as you know, in the train, one facing the other. And it happened to be that this person who was sitting in the compartment was a very well-known, famous, in the 1930s at least, a very famous movie actor, star in many motion pictures. And he was there in the compartment with them. And Yogananda started a conversation. And they naturally were sharing a little bit of my life, your life, what I do, what you do, and so on. And this was going back and forth. The movie actor told Yogananda, because Yogananda began to suggest some spiritual suggestions to him, and he began to act, a little bit, just very gently. And the man said, "I will have you know, sir, that I am disgustingly wealthy. So don't tell me anything, in other words, don't tell me anything about how to improve my life. I am disgustingly wealthy." And Yogananda said, oh, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. And not only that, I want you to know that I am disgustingly healthy. So your yoga, in other words, is not for me. It was a subtle message underneath that. And he paused, and then Yogananda said to him, well, that's all very good, sir, but let me ask you one question. Are you disgustingly happy? And the man paused, and he said, no, I'm not. And he says, Yogananda said, now let us begin. And he began then to talk from that perspective. But this is something, when we speak about success, we're going to speak a little bit here about material success, but lest I forget, what I'm going to share with you today is but a fraction of something that was later put into book form by Swami Kriyananda. It's called Material Success Through Yoga Principles. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of material here. So what we'll be able to cover in a very short time is just an overview. But I mentioned this because if you do have the wish to go further into these, I recommend that you perhaps take this home with you, or from time to time at our ashrams and various centers, we present these teachings in class form from time to time. So follow up on it. But the principles I want to share a little bit with you today. And we have to start by asking this question: what is success? You can define it in many different ways. Material success, I think when I say material success, I bet a good proportion of you think of something. Money. Isn't that so? Money, or if not money, some form of money. Nice house, good car, good career, some of those things. And these are all fine. Again, please, I'm not saying that these are not appropriate. They are appropriate in the right context. But success itself, what is that? Achieving what you set your mind to do, maybe, transcending some obstacle that you have in life, some small object that you have your heart's desire on, that you finally succeed and get it. What might it be for you? And I think it's important that you look into your own life and ask yourself, what is it that you define success as? Because this is what these tools can help us to achieve. Each of us has our own definition of what success is. When I was that young man in college, before that, as a teenager growing up, as a young boy, I was a very hard worker. I was a little bit athletic. I was good at athletics, and I loved to win. To me, success was winning. There's an American president who defines it that way as well. Is it winning, but at your loss? Well, this is how I define success. Is I wanted to win. I wanted to compete. But I began, as I later on began to look back on my life, I began to see that actually success isn't that really wasn't success for me. It wasn't so much that I wanted to win. When I looked closer, the real motivation was I hated to lose. I was afraid to lose, really. If I lost, I would be embarrassed. My sense of self-worth would go down. I had to win because if I lost, I felt less of myself. I was insecure. Now, this is not uncommon to young people growing up. It was only when later on I grew up, I get to be an adult, and I said, well, that was a silly way to go about it. But nevertheless, it's important that when we talk about success, ask yourself, what does success mean for you? Family? Perhaps it could mean good relationships, harmonious situation, your children being well settled, many different things, personal success. But inevitably you'll find that there are deeper principles at play, and that real success is sometimes what we think of as success is not really what it is we want. And I think this goes back to Yogananda's story, that he can be very wealthy, and I think we've all known people like this. They've been very wealthy, maybe, perhaps. They've been very healthy, perhaps. But you read in the newspaper they commit suicide. They end their life. They're miserable. So that obviously cannot be defined as success. Happiness could be a good way to define it, inner happiness. But again, I think what it is we want to be free. We want to transcend whatever little obstacles that we feel that we have in our life, to be able to be free of them, to be able to enjoy life on all levels. And isn't this actually what the Vedas say, is that we need to be able to enjoy life on all levels. But of course, obviously, that spiritual level is the pinnacle of what we're shooting for. But we're not going to be achieving that if we're incompetent in the day-to-day activities of our life. We have to be efficient as well. And so what I want to share with you today are a few basic principles that Paramahansa Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda, the teachers of all traditions actually, have presented as ingredients for practical success. Now, I could have chosen many different principles, and so I winnowed this down to this topic of material success. And so that let's look at some of the things that can help us be able to achieve that. What I'm going to present and discuss today, is going to be encapsulated by these, this triangle of success, these three aspects that I want to address today. As you can see here, we have right tools, right attitudes and thoughts, and we have right choices. About 2 months ago, I stay mostly in Pune. That's my home base. And I was in Pune, and somebody was doing errands. I don't even remember what it was. Perhaps somebody was shopping. And I was in the car, left behind in the car, waiting. They're parked. They just wait, I'll be back. And I was there. Well, they parked the car right next to a construction site. And this construction site, there was a fellow working. There was a truck had pulled up to that construction site, and coming out of the back of the truck was a whole crew of young men that were taking bricks out of the truck. They were loading the bricks, and they were taking the bricks to store it, getting ready for this construction project that was there. Now, I was interested in this, watching these fellows, because when I was a young man, in my 20s, I was actually a supervisor of construction crews. And it was one of my incarnations, you might say, in this lifetime. I supervised construction crews, and so I was interested in watching how they were doing. And in the process of unloading this, I began to notice something. There was one young man there. For every brick that everybody else in the crew would unload off of that truck, he unloaded 2. He was going back, and I couldn't help but watch him. I said, that fellow is amazing. Look at that. Look at the energy that young guy's got. And he was going at it. And in my mind, I thought, now if that young man were to turn his attention to something other than unloading bricks, maybe in the future he will, he is going to be successful. That fellow has the basic ingredient of what it's going to take to be able to succeed in life. And what was that? He was energetic. And if you look at anybody who is successful in life, you're going to see that they have energy. And it's not only, and as this young man expressed it, in the body. He was physically energetic, but at a young age, that's usually what we do. But if he was to direct that in other directions, he would be successful in whatever he did. And I hope he takes it further. Now, if you look at an ingredient of success in whatever field that you're in, you'll see that the people who succeed are the people who work hard. It's obvious. You have to be able to work hard. You have to be able to focus that. You have to be able to, you might say, if I were to take concentrated energy that is focused, not scattered. Now that young man focused it on unloading bricks. Whatever you choose to do, if you do that, and you do whatever the task is that's in front of you to the best of your ability with concentration and with energy, you're going to be successful. Now, this is the question of why is this true? Now, it's obvious. You get twice as much done. That young fellow got twice as many bricks off the truck than the other fellow, and so he's going to be twice as successful. But it's more than that. Something more is at play. If you want to be successful, you concentrate energy, and something begins to happen. You'll begin to create magnetism. Now, think about this. This is a physical principle of the world. If you of the physical world. You direct energy in a certain direction through a wire. What is going to be the result? You're going to create an electromagnetic field around that wire. And magnetism is going to be generated. And what is magnetism? It's that power to attract. Something is going to be attracted and that's going to be compatible with it. And that something is going to be, in the case of success, if you want to be successful, you put out a tremendous amount of energy in a focused direction, like a laser, you might say, and you're going to create magnetism, and you're going to start attracting something to yourself. You're going to start attracting guidance. You're going to start attracting opportunity. You're going to start attracting things that are supportive to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Now, I mentioned I was in the construction trade as a young man, supervising, and sometimes we'd do complicated projects, and I would not know how to proceed. I would be stumped. Now, those of you who all, in some fashion or another, can relate to a situation where you just don't know what to do. And so, what do? Sit at your desk, look out the window. Well, it's one choice, but it's probably not going to lead to success. What you start to do, and what I did, if I was stuck, the first thing I would do is I would start to work. Now, I would actually physically get in there and work with the construction crews and just to start working, and in a positive direction, a logical positive direction, start doing something with the crews, with the men. And I noticed something would happen. As I began to work, I began to get ideas. I could do this. I could do that. I could do this, until finally I'd begin to understand what the problem is and where the solution would lie. You begin to attract solutions to yourself when you put out focused energy in a concentrated direction. And it's simply a process of magnetism. This is how it happens. Now, in 1944-45, there's a great American general in the World War II. His name was George Patton. There was a famous movie about him some years ago, but he had a saying which I always admired. He said, "No good decision has ever been made out of a swivel chair." And what did he mean by that? He says, people think that great decisions are made by cogitating on them very intensely. But no, it's when you start to put out energy, you begin to attract solutions to yourself. They begin to come. So the principle is start the movement of energy in whatever it is that you're engaged in, and you'll begin to get ideas. You'll begin to get solutions. You'll begin to get support to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in your life. And if you're now, you figure out a way to apply that to your business or to your endeavor. But sitting back passively will not generate success. You have to act. You have to put out energy and you have to act. And that will attract. Now, that energy does not necessarily need to be physical. I say it physical because I was a young man in those days, but nevertheless, that has to be energy put out. Now, there's a story from the life of Napoleon, that Napoleon was, as you know, great general, great emperor, for a time at least, and Napoleon had a method by which he would pick his military generals. And he would ask them if they were competent, of course, and then one way or another. But then he would always come to one question, which he would ask. He would ask the generals, is he lucky? Now, what kind of question is that? Is he lucky? But he would not appoint a general who was unlucky. Now, is there such a thing as just luck? Well, you think about that, but he would ask that question because luck tends to be apportioned to some people more than others. It doesn't seem fair almost, but why is that? Because luck it's not random. People generate luck. They're willing to meet luck halfway. They're willing to attract luck to themselves. Favorable circumstances come to some more than others. It seems almost unfair. Now, yes, you could say it's karma. And that's the normal thing. People say, well, he's just got good karma. Okay, well, that's good too for a general, to have good karma. But there's more than that. Why does luck favor some people more than others? And it comes back to these two basic principles. Energy, magnetism. And we must generate that magnetism. And you'll see that some people, isn't it true? You look at some people in life and they're just, they're not magnetic. And other people, you just want to embrace them in a sense. Put yourself in their magnetic influence. And you will begin to, just like a magnet, if you put yourself next to a physical magnet, you'll become magnetized too. It's just a property. That's actually one of the, if you want to attune yourself to something, put yourself in that environment and you'll begin to, if you want to take it on, if you want to be a good musician, put yourself in the company of good musicians, mathematicians, artists, businessmen, scientists. Put yourself in the environment and you'll begin to take on those qualities. Now, I should mention, be careful who you associate with, because some people are unmagnetic, or steal your magnetism, you might say. Or you'll take on magnetism you really didn't want to take on. There was a while back, somebody was showing me some pictures, family pictures, showed me a picture of her husband. I saw the picture of the husband. Oh, that's a nice man. I could tell right away just by looking at the picture, at the photograph of the husband. That's a good man. Showed me another picture. Oh, this is a friend of mine. And I went, oh. And I didn't say this, but my mind said, stay away from that man. You could just tell. I mean, maybe I'm being prejudiced here. But haven't you noticed this sometime? One, first problem was the husband was dressed quite nicely, had a nice white shirt, had a smile on his face. This fellow had black pants, black shirt, black sunglasses, and I thought, oh. But we have influence on one another. So think of it in your own self. You have magnetism right now by the way you carry your body, by the way you speak, by the way you dress, by how you behave, and you are attracting something to yourself. What is it? What would you find attractive if you were encountering yourself? And other, I would tell a story when I first met Swami Kriyananda, my teacher. I was a young man, 22, and I kind of fancied myself as being cool. Cool young men behave a certain way, and so I kind of, and I carried my body in a certain way, walked a certain way. And after, I'd known Swamiji for about 2 months. One day I was walking along. I was kind of, shuffling along, let me say. And somebody came up behind me, and their arm went around my chest, and the hand went in my back, and he says, "Stand up, for God's sakes. You're never going to get anywhere in this world if you walk around like that." I thought, "Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir." And never after that, I've always tried to mind my posture, because it's true. It's true how you are putting out magnetism by the way you carry yourself. Whether you smile or don't smile. I just saw an article in the newspaper that there's going to have the World Cup in Russia, and they're having classes throughout Moscow teaching the hosts to smile. And Russians are very famous, actually, for being rather dour. And so they're having smiling classes, or have you ever, laughing clubs, laughing actually it's a good exercise, is you put out magnetism. So materially, if you apply that, what type of magnetism are you putting out to be able to attract success to yourself? You have to have a positive, energetic, magnetic, attractive demeanor to be able to attract that. Now, this is achieved in many different ways. I'm just mentioning something very obvious. But if you're thinking along those lines, if you want to be attractive materially, associate with successful people and begin to look, how do they behave in terms of the energy flow? Now, there may be qualities you don't want, but in terms of the success, begin to draw that to you. Now, there's 3 elements to these tools, and they're all interrelated. And the third one is this: willpower. Now, willpower is the ability of intention. It's intention backed by energy. And being able to put one's will behind something is critical. You could say that will is the switch that turns the energy on and off. And if a person does not have control of that switch, you will not be able to turn it on. So you have to be able to turn it on. The greater the will, as Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, the greater the flow of energy. And it's a little bit more subtle than that. You have this under your power. Now, let's just say you come home at night. Now, think this is a very easily imaginable example. You come home at night, you've been working hard all day. You're tired. You just want to, just rest, take it easy for the night. And you just cannot think of doing anything else. You come and you've arrived home, and the kids want to play, you don't want to play. The wife wants something, or the husband wants something, you just don't want it. All of a sudden, you get a phone call. An old friend wants to come over. As a matter of fact, the friend has free tickets to the latest movie, for you, the whole family, and himself to go just down the street to go see the latest blockbuster movie that you've been wanting to see, would you like to go? No matter when, as long as we're there, let's go out for dinner. And you go, yes, let's go. And away you go. Now, where did that energy come from? Where? It's the same energy. It's because you wanted to do it. So the ability to summon what you want to do and do it under the power of your will is all the difference in the world. Not being subject to forces outside of yourself is what I'm saying. You have the power to choose what you want to do. Now, this overlaps a little bit with choice, which I'm going to come to. But as an example, some years ago in Pune, a young man at a discourse like this in the question and answer session, he asked me the question. He says, well, tell me, you've been in this yoga tradition for a long time. Show me your powers. And I said, good question, young man, but I don't have any powers. And then I thought, well, I have one power. I have one power. I can choose to be happy when I want to be. And he thought about that. And he says, good, that's a good one. That's a good one. But actually, we have more than that one. If we use it, we have the power, maybe, to choose. And this is, of course, to be able to summon our will to do what we know is the right thing to do. So if we want to be successful, those people who are energetic, magnetic, and also have the ability to use their will so that nothing is going to deter them from accomplishing what they want to accomplish. And you'll find that if the world is resistant to change. You want to accomplish something, it's difficult, it resists. But if you have a strong will, and those people you look and read the biographies of people who have been successful, they're people who have been able to persist and accomplish through their will again and again. I was reading the biography of the patriarch, the Tata patriarch from the last 19th century. Man of tremendous will. Opportunities came to him. But why did they come to him? Because of his will and magnetism. And this is what you'll see in any of the great, you might say, financial leaders who have struggled. They have drawn that success to themselves. Now, there are divine forces at play, there are karmas at play, all of these. But who created our karma in the first place? It was we. We created it. And so if we created it, we can change it, and we can manipulate it and influence it. Yes, and we can receive it in the right way. It's up to us, and it's in our hands. And so this is what we have to understand. We have the power to be able to influence our lives and not be passive. And this will guarantee and bring success. Now there's a larger perspective. There's a divine perspective. We'll come to that. Now, corollary to greater the will, the greater the flow of energy, the greater the flow of energy, the greater the flow of magnetism. Now, I don't have, since time is limited, I want to go on to the second one, right attitudes and thoughts. Many people, unfortunately, they have energy, but it's scattered, it's blocked, it's not able to be expressed. And essentially it comes down to this. And I think in some ways this is maybe the most important, to have the right attitudes and thoughts, because as we think, so we will become. Now, yes, I know there's many other than that, but we have to look at this in a long term of lifetimes after lifetimes. We are the way we are through things that we have put into motion through our own either experience in this lifetime or in lifetimes in the past. It's not somebody else's fault. And to that degree, It's in our hands to be able to change that. And so, but the attitudes that we have, and what is an attitude actually? Because if any of you have teenagers as children, sometimes a parent will say to a teenager, "Son, you've got a bad attitude." That, looking at it, you have change your attitude. And what do you mean by that? It's sort of your approach to life, the direction that you're moving. And many people are blocked, self-destructive, because of the attitudes that they have imbibed. They've learned, they've taken them on as habit. And that's how they approach life in that way. And they're influenced. It's almost as if there's a groove, and that water is going to run down that groove simply because of the attitude that they have. Their experiences will be determined by their attitudes. A wonderful thing can happen in their life, and a negative person is going to see the glass as half full or half empty. Positive person sees it as half full. Isn't it so? Some people are just gloomy and glum. And now, what the effect of this is, now I'm just going to put on the screen a few. Positive versus negative attitude. Which one is going to win? Yes, I can. No, I can't do that. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yeah, no. Which one's going to win? Which one's going to stick to it and find success? Solutions versus problems. I'm sure a number of you work in offices where you have committees. The problem is in front of you. I got a solution. Guy across the table, no, that's not going to work. Okay, well, how about this? No, that's not going to work. No, it's always a problem, never a solution in some people's minds. Now, I suggest, if you're in that situation, and this is what I have done actually in committee meetings, I says, nobody can point up, if somebody makes a suggestion, you cannot make it into a problem unless you have a solution also. So if the problem is this, but here's a solution to it, because there is always a solution. Now, are you a person who looks for solutions? Or are you a person who you see the landscape, the lay of the land? Here's the problem, why that's not going to work. Oh, nothing's going to work. And what is going to be the result of that? Again, it's no, no, no. Expansion or contraction? Which one of these does yes lead to expansion, or does no lead to expansion? Which one leads to contraction? When it's no, there's a whole contractive force begins to happen. Versus when you say yes to life as an attitude, an expansion begins to happen. Now, there's an interesting result that happens from this. And this is a spiritual principle that goes beyond material success. Whenever you are expansive, in other words, your sense of self has grown. Like when I was a child, I was fearful of failure. When I got rid of that, I felt larger. I felt expanded. My world had gotten bigger. Whenever you succeed, why do you feel happy? My world has gotten bigger. Whenever there's something larger, a sense of self has increased, you feel better. You're expansive. You feel joyful. And whenever you feel joyful, notice you're more embracive of the world at large. The horizons seem larger. So expansiveness, joyfulness, a sense of well-being, all go when things are expansive. Now, the opposite is also true. Sense of smallness, contraction, sense of no, limitation. All of those, you feel less and less, or greater, you feel small. And what's going to be the consequence of that? You're going to feel limited and unhappy. So the two go together as a principle. When you're judging situations, what's expansive? What's supportive of a flow of life force or support of energy, which are energetic? So the attitudes here, and the importance of right attitudes. A right attitude is that which enables a flow of energy when we're speaking about material success. But remember, this is more than just material success, which stimulates a flow of energy and enables it. And you'll find that that's going to be leading to success. And success more than on the physical plane, success in a sense of well-being. It's going to be, they go together. And so keep that in mind as a principle. And finally, this sense of willingness versus reluctance. A person who, now some of you are managers, I suspect, or you have people, let's say, who are, they work under you. You're the manager and you have a team. Now, if you have a team and you have a job to do, and the others on your team are instruments for helping to get that job done, which kind of person do you want on your team? Somebody who's willing to do the needful? Somebody who's reluctant. Hey, we need this report. It's got to be done by tomorrow night. Can you do it? Yes, I'm on it. Hey, we've got this report needs to be done by tomorrow. Well, God, I don't really want to do it. And, this reluctance, you see this in other people working on your team. Now, which one do you want on your team? Slowly, the reluctant ones, you kind of, you shed them, if you possibly can, over time. The willing ones, you want them be on your team. Now ask yourself, what are you? Are you willing? Are you, when something comes up, do you say, yes, I'm on it. I'm going for it. That brick fellow, I suspect whoever his employer was, he wants that guy. Yes, I'm on it. I'm willing. And your approach to life, are you willingly, life is giving all of us opportunities and challenges every day, every moment. Are you willing to accept the challenge that is coming your way? Or are you reluctant? Say, it's not mine. I don't want to deal with it. It's too much. I can't do it. You have a choice in everything that you do to willingly accept the challenge of what life is giving you and to deal with it, or to push it away. And now, if you have the attitude of, okay, I'm going to deal with it, you're going to be eventually attracting those powers to yourself that are going to make you successful. And no matter where you place it. Now we're speaking materially here. It's true though. It's going to work on that level. Opportunities will come. People will magnetize to you. You'll find that success will come to you. But if you're the type that pushes it away, you stopped the flow of energy. And so these are, you might say, right attitudes and thoughts. I come back to that one, thoughts and attitudes are connected. As you think, so you're going to become. You're putting out the seeds in every one of your thoughts of what the future is going to hold for you. Yes, I can. No, I can't. And this is a subject for a much full class all in and of itself. So I can't go into it much beyond that, or we'll be here a little bit too long. So I'm going to just move on to key principles on that. Right attitudes attract abundance. It's just a basic fact. As you think, so you become. Oh, I slipped this one in here. It is not in your passing thoughts or brilliant ideas, but your everyday habits that control your life. Habits of thought are mental magnets. They draw to themselves specific objects relative to the quality of their magnetism. Now, right choices. Now, you can have plenty of energy. You can have a good attitude. But I remember we said willpower also is in there. You have will. You have to use that will. And the way you use that will is you make choices. Now, there's this old story you've heard, most of you, in some form or another. The young boy asks his grandfather, "Grandfather, you're so wise. How did you get to be so wise?" And the grandfather says, "Well, son, I've made lots of good choices." "Oh, well, how did you learn to make so many good choices?" "I made lots of bad choices." And so consequently, we can have plenty of energy and we can have all of these, but it's also, we do have to choose. And to make right choices is not guaranteed by having lots of energy. Now, if we're sensitive, we'll listen to guidance. Our intuition will begin to guide us. But we also have to, a little bit of guidelines have to be done in terms of making the choices that are going to lead to success. Now, think about this. Goals, long-term versus short-term. I feel that too many people make their decisions based upon short-term goals, not long-term goals. The fellow who, the vendor, or the fellow in the store, the shop owner who tries to sell you something you know is not exactly as he claims it to be, he's really working from short-term goals. You don't respect that fellow. He's trying to sell you something maybe that's under false pretenses. He has a short-term goal. He wants to get your money right now. He does not want to make a long-term customer. Now, that's short-term thinking. And oftentimes this is the motivation of businessmen. Businessmen look for right now, I want to separate you from your rupees, rather than building customer relationship that's going to be able to return, a continuous return over the long haul. Now, you apply that to many things in life, thinking in long terms, short-term cutting corners versus long-term proper behavior. Now, I don't need to give you examples of how this applies here in Delhi, but we have to think long-term. What's going to, and even in the sense of karmically long-term, what are we putting in motion by our choices, which may not come back to reverberate slowly right now in this month, this year, but in the long run, there is no such thing in this world as a free lunch. There's a price for everything that we pay in one fashion or another. So if we put something into motion that is not proper, that is going to come back. And ultimately, the great law of karma rules. So we have to think in terms of what is really the long-term benefit. We also have to think what is it that we want for ourselves in the long term? What is our goal? Is it to be materially successful in this lifetime but miserable? Or is it happiness? A sense of wealth, a good welfare for everybody, a sense of service. All of these higher principles is what our goals should be. So it's long-term versus short-term. Use this as a guide in your choices. Conscious choice versus subconscious habit. One of the first principles, now I happen to be a teacher of meditation, a teacher of yoga, a teacher of these sorts of principles, but this applies beyond that. One of the first things that I try to get students to do in life, approach life, is to make conscious choices. Don't just go by your subconscious likes and dislikes, habits, things that have been put into motion, the lower brain, all of these sorts of things. Bring your awareness up so that you're making a choice that's based upon, you might say right now, rational decisions, but eventually that are guided by higher principles as well. So become conscious. Now, how to become conscious? Amit is going to come up in a little later, and he's going to maybe share an exercise or two. Intuition, it's a key, it's a clue. Develop your intuition, be guided more than the intellect alone. And let soul freedom be your guide. Ask yourself this. People ask me all the time, what should I do? How do I decide? What's the right thing to... I mean, this is a universal question everybody asks of themselves. What direction am I going? And this world is a relative world. It's directional. But we have to make soul freedom our goal. What we all want, ultimately and eventually, is to be free souls. And what action is going to bind you? What action is going to free you, take you to less binding? What action is going to have repercussions? What's going to have those repercussions, if not now, in the future? Go towards soul freedom. Ask yourself that when you're making decisions in life, and you'll find that you'll be rightly guided. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Oh, no, I pressed the wrong button. Key principles. Intuitive guidance is the direct fruit of meditation. So I want to encourage you. It's direct fruit of meditation, or at least say introspection, looking within. Begin to develop that intuitive side, not just the intellectual side, but the intuitive side. And you'll find this is the best guide for material decisions as well. Because all of us are asking this question, what should I do? What is the right action? And remember this. Wherever there's Dharma, there's victory. We need to, this in the higher sense is, again, wherever there's Dharma, you're going to be moving in the direction of soul freedom. You're going to be, because when we make choices, our decisions need to align with a higher purpose. People think, well, it really doesn't matter. It's all relative, whether I cheat my customer, whether I do the right thing, whether I cut corners, whether I do something that's of higher nature. It does matter, because we are putting into motion forces that eventually will come back to ourselves to either bind us or free us. And if we work in harmony with the larger purpose of life, which is ultimately to take all of us toward freedom, we'll find in attunement and an alignment with those forces that are universally beneficial, we'll find that we ourselves will align ourselves with those cosmic principles that bring success. This is what we want to get out of our head. People think that material success and spiritual success are inimical to each other. In other words, oppose each other. They don't. One is beneficial to the other. God doesn't want poverty in this world. It's mankind's choices that lead to poverty. Wrong choices lead to suffering. Not only for ourselves, but for society as a whole. But if we align ourselves with universal principles, now we could go into these, but it's another discussion. But I think you understand intuitively what I'm speaking about here. That there are certain directions in life that, for example, those things that limit us, make us small, versus those things that make us large and expand. The ego, you might say, self-serving activity, helping no one except for ourselves, it's very limiting. Helping your neighbor, being expansive, being serviceful, this is expansive. Which one is going to bring greater happiness to you, and ultimately which is going to bring positive benefits to not only you in the future, but to society as a whole? And I think this is, for many of you here, I hope, and I suspect, are in a position of leadership in one fashion or another. And I think this is something that is needed for those of us who are in leadership and can influence other people at this time and in this age, is that we have to inculcate these values. Leadership in success, role models, of bringing this message of there is a higher purpose to what all of us are doing in this world, and that we need to bring these values of service, of joyful giving of ourselves to others, of sharing with one another, all of these things that are dharmic principles that have been handed down through us through the ages. It's the responsibility of those people who can make a difference in the world to be role models for that, to be able to pass these to other people in this day and age, because it's very, very much needed. We have in our hands the future if we choose to use that power that has been given to us to be able to make a difference in this world. And the difference starts with each one of us by bringing the principles, the spiritual principles, into the material world, whether it's in education, whether it's in our family life, raising children, it's in our business. This is our responsibility, and more than our responsibility, it's our opportunity, because when we use that opportunity and we express these values, other people may be benefited, yes, I hope so, but who is the ultimate beneficiary? It's we are. We find ourselves happier. We find that life works better. Our families, the people that we know, our friends, they're happier. But also, we find that we're more successful. Successful on all levels, not just material, but also on the spiritual level. Life begins to work in harmony in the way that you could say that God meant it to work for us. We need to be instruments for those higher values and put them into practice through each of our daily lives. So I thank you all very much for coming today, and I'm going to conclude it with that.